In the past 24 hours, the global news cycle has broadcast three major headlines. Headline 1. The Guardian reports at 1826 that Iranian suicide drones penetrated multiple layers of air defense. They struck heavy fuel tanks at Kuwait International Airport. The Civil Aviation Authority confirmed the hit, but all data regarding damage to the shared military runways has been completely blacked out. Headline 2. CBS News confirms at 1400 hours that the Israeli Defense Forces executed a massive wave of airstrikes inside Iran. Their target was not a nuclear centrifuge. It was the Underwater Research Center in Isfahan. Iran's only submarine production and maintenance facility suffered complete structural destruction. Headline 3. The Wall Street Journal reports that the United States Department of Defense just authorized the emergency deployment of 3,000 elite paratroopers. These are operators from the 82nd Airborne Division, a rapid reaction force capable of deploying anywhere on Earth in under 24 hours. Viewed in isolation, these are separate events: an air defense failure, a targeted naval strike, a routine troop movement. But in the theater of asymmetric warfare, there are no isolated incidents. There are only synchronized maneuvers. While politicians stand at podiums and sell you a 15-point peace plan, the military architecture for a massive ground invasion is quietly locking into place. 3,000 paratroopers loaded onto transport planes, highly classified drop coordinates, a deliberate intelligence blind spot over a critical Kuwaiti logistics hub, and a preemptive strike to clear the ocean floor of Iranian submarines. Let us look at the raw, verified data, because the war they are telling you about on television is ending, but the war they are quietly preparing for is just beginning. That is development number 1, which brings us to the kinetic reality on the ground. The Lebanese military recently recovered debris from an Iranian ballistic missile. The weapon was identified as a Qadr 110, but forensic analysis revealed a critical deviation from standard Iranian military doctrine. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps completely modified the payload architecture. They stripped the traditional single high-explosive warhead. In its place, they packed the nose cone with submunitions, small, independent, unguided rockets designed to mechanically separate in the upper atmosphere. This is not a minor technical upgrade. It is a fundamental shift in asymmetric strike capability. Consider the physics of a traditional intercept. A point defense system tracks a single incoming mass. It calculates a geometric intercept trajectory, launches a kinetic kill vehicle, and neutralizes the threat in the sky. It is a clean one-to-one equation. But when the Qadr 110 reaches terminal altitude, it opens up. It releases a swarm. You are no longer tracking a single ballistic arc. You are facing a shotgun spread of high-velocity micro-targets raining down simultaneously. Point defense networks are mathematically overwhelmed by this tactic. They are designed for precision, not volume. A $4 million interceptor missile is suddenly forced to choose between 50 simultaneous targets, each costing less than $20,000. The tracking computers suffer target saturation. The processing algorithms break down. The radar screens turn white with ghost signatures. The defense grid does not just fail, it becomes economically and operationally irrelevant. This is exactly the mechanism used to blind the American installations in the region. When submunitions and suicide drones shatter an early warning radar grid, they do not just destroy antennas. They strip the command centers of their reaction time. They force a highly advanced military to operate completely in the dark. The results of this tactical shift are already visible. In the past few hours, ballistic missiles carrying 100-kilogram warheads bypassed multiple layers of Israeli air defense. They penetrated the airspace over Tel Aviv. 100 kilograms of high explosives detonating in the center of a modern metropolis. To understand that metric, you must look at the structural physics, not the political rhetoric. A 100-kilogram payload does not require a direct kinetic impact to neutralize a target. The overpressure wave alone expands at supersonic speeds. It generates enough atmospheric compression to shatter load-bearing concrete pillars within a 50-meter radius. It turns high-density apartment blocks into immediate structural traps. The air is compressed so violently that human organs fail from the shockwave long before the shrapnel settles. Decades of engineering and billions of dollars in funding, billions of dollars, entirely bypassed by a simple mechanical separation mechanism. That is the cold arithmetic of an uncontested sky. Which brings us to the second operational vector, the Israeli strike on Isfahan. At 1400 hours, the Israeli Defense Forces launched a massive wave of airstrikes deep into Iranian territory. Their target was not a nuclear centrifuge. It was not a ballistic missile silo. It was the Underwater Research Center in Isfahan. The only submarine production and maintenance facility operated by the Iranian Navy suffered complete structural destruction. The media called it a retaliatory strike. But military planners do not waste multi-million-dollar precision munitions on simple revenge. Isfahan is located deep inland. Striking it required navigating hundreds of miles of hostile airspace and bypassing complex anti-aircraft batteries. You do not authorize that level of risk to send a political message. You strike for strategic prep. Why submarines? Why Isfahan? Why now? A submarine is not an offensive weapon of terror. It is the ultimate area denial platform. It is a stealth mine layer. It is the only vessel capable of quietly seeding the Strait of Hormuz with bottom-tethered acoustic mines without being detected by American satellites. If you want to choke 20% of the global oil supply, you do not use a drone. You use a submarine. But more importantly, look at the operational timeline. If you are the United States military, and you are preparing to drop 3,000 elite paratroopers onto Kharg Island to secure the Persian Gulf, your logistics network must cross that water. Your transport ships, your amphibious assault vessels, your supply lines. They need a clean ocean floor. They cannot navigate through an invisible minefield. Israel did not bomb Isfahan to stop an Iranian missile launch. They bombed Isfahan to remove the underwater platforms that would sink American transport ships in the Persian Gulf. Let that sink in. The Israelis are clearing the naval theater for an American ground invasion. They executed a decapitation strike on Iran's maritime blockade capability. By completely erasing the Underwater Research Center, the Allied forces have sanitized the coastal waters. The ocean corridor is open. The amphibious and airborne elements now have a secure operational window to deploy. This is how you dismantle a nation's defense before you put boots on the ground. You blind their radars. You overwhelm their interceptors. And you sink their submarines while they are still sitting in dry dock. But the kinetic strike was just the beginning. The real bleeding started when the markets opened. At 1826, Iranian suicide drones bypassed the air defense grid over Kuwait International Airport. They struck the heavy aviation fuel tanks. The Civil Aviation Authority immediately confirmed the civilian impact. But they placed a total information blackout on the shared military runways. There are no satellite images. There are no damage assessments. There is only silence. That silence is the most dangerous metric in this entire equation. Kuwait is not just a commercial transit hub. It is the logistical spine of the United States military presence in the Middle East. It hosts Camp Arifjan. It is the primary forward staging area for regional ground operations. When you destroy the heavy fuel reserves at that specific airport, you are not just causing a localized fire. You are grounding massive transport aircraft. You are paralyzing the supply chain. You are blinding the early warning radar networks. If the 82nd Airborne Division is preparing for a mass combat drop, they require absolute air superiority. They rely on massive C-17 Globemaster transport planes. Those planes need continuous logistical support. They need secure runways. They need millions of gallons of aviation fuel. And right now the airspace is compromised. The fuel is burning. The radar operators are completely blind. This brings us to the ultimate strategic target. The reason 3,000 elite paratroopers are sitting on the tarmac with classified drop coordinates. Kharg Island. It is the geographic center of Iranian oil export infrastructure. And it sits right next to the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the global oil supply flows through that 21-mile channel. 20%. And the United States government is preparing to drop 3,000 soldiers directly into that exact location. When you insert a rapid reaction force into a critical energy choke point, you are not just fighting a military battle. You are detonating a financial shockwave. The global economy runs on a very fragile algorithm of risk and supply. When American boots hit the ground on Kharg Island, the commercial shipping lanes will freeze instantly. Maritime insurance underwriters operate on cold mathematics. The moment a combat drop is confirmed, the Strait of Hormuz becomes a designated war zone. Premiums for massive oil tankers will not just increase, the coverage will be entirely suspended. Without insurance, no commercial vessel will enter the Persian Gulf. The tankers will drop anchor in the Arabian Sea. The flow of crude oil will hit a hard stop. This is the ripple effect. This is where a tactical maneuver 6,000 miles away reaches directly into your wallet. Wall Street algorithms are not pricing in a surprise airborne invasion. The financial markets are operating under the delusion of diplomatic stability. When the news breaks that American paratroopers are securing Iranian oil terminals, Brent crude will violently recalibrate. We are not talking about a gradual market correction. We are talking about a vertical price spike. Within 48 hours of that deployment, the price of unleaded gasoline at your local pump will surge to levels we have never seen. The cost of diesel will follow immediately. And when diesel spikes, the domestic supply chain fractures. Every truck delivering food to your grocery store, every freight train moving goods across the country, every cargo ship entering an American port, their operating costs will double overnight. The Federal Reserve cannot print commercial aviation fuel. Interest rate adjustments cannot reopen a blockaded maritime strait. Monetary policy is entirely powerless against a physical supply chain severed by suicide drones and paratroopers. Look at the terrifying economic asymmetry. A $20,000 drone strikes a fuel tank in Kuwait. It blinds a radar facility. It forces the emergency deployment of a highly expensive airborne division. That deployment shuts down a global shipping lane. And within days, an American family is paying $20 more just to fill their gas tank to drive to work. That is the true cost of asymmetric warfare. It drains the homeland from the inside out. The military-industrial complex absorbs the defense funding, but the middle class absorbs the inflation. The administration will inevitably blame the resulting economic crisis on corporate greed or foreign manipulation. But the truth is structural. They are prioritizing the tactical neutralization of an overseas adversary over the financial security of their own citizens. They are trading affordable domestic energy for military control of a foreign island. And the most terrifying part of this calculation is that they are doing it entirely in the dark. The early warning systems are down. The air defense networks are saturated with submunitions. The submarines were destroyed to clear a maritime path, but the sky above is still heavily contested. The paratroopers are flying into a compromised and chaotic theater. If a single transport plane goes down, if a single platoon is cut off without resupply, the geopolitical fallout will be instantaneous. The markets will completely panic. The crude oil supply will be locked behind a wall of fire and steel. And the American consumer will finance the entire catastrophe. That is the reality on the ground. But 6,000 miles away in Washington, a completely different story is being spun. The administration and the Pentagon are standing at the podiums, selling a narrative of absolute control. They are broadcasting the success of a secret 15-point plan negotiated through Pakistani back channels. The official line from the Defense Department is that the talks are progressing very well. They claim the adversary has agreed to freeze its weapons development. They are telling the American public that a diplomatic off-ramp is imminent and the crisis is contained. Now listen to the exact translated transcript from the other side. Just hours ago, senior Iranian security officials appeared on the state-run press television network. They did not announce a ceasefire. They did not accept a single American condition. They looked directly into the camera and publicly mocked the proposal. They officially called the 15-point plan, quote, delusional and detached from reality, unquote. Delusional and detached from reality. This is not a diplomatic breakdown. This is not a misunderstanding between negotiating partners. This is a deliberate, synchronized intelligence smokescreen. Ask yourself a simple logical question. You do not authorize the emergency deployment of 3,000 elite paratroopers if a peace agreement is going very well. You do not arm the 82nd Airborne Division, prep their massive transport planes, and black out the radar signatures of your regional logistics hubs if you are about to sign a treaty. The peace plan is a ghost. It is a fabricated diplomatic shield designed for one singular purpose: to buy time. Moving 3,000 paratroopers across the globe is an incredibly vulnerable logistical window. You have to stage the massive C-17 Globemasters. You have to coordinate the mid-air refueling. You have to establish the staging grounds in allied territories without drawing attention. If you broadcast that you are preparing for a massive ground invasion, the enemy fortifies the drop zones. They deploy anti-aircraft batteries. They unleash their submarine fleet to mine the coastal waters. That is exactly why the Israelis had to obliterate the Isfahan submarine center yesterday. And that is exactly why the Pentagon is desperately pushing a fake peace plan today. They are clearing the military chessboard while telling the public the game is over. Think about the sheer scale of the coordination required to maintain this deception. Every press secretary, every anonymous defense official leaking to the major papers, they are all singing from the exact same sheet music. They use phrases like constructive dialogue and mutual concessions. They paint a picture of diplomats sitting across mahogany tables, carefully hammering out the future of the Middle East. It is a highly produced theatrical performance designed purely for domestic consumption. The true diplomacy is not happening at a negotiating table. It is happening in the targeting bays of bomber aircraft and the classified briefing rooms of the airborne infantry. The political elite are using the word peace to sedate the global markets. They are feeding the 15-point plan to the major news networks so that the financial algorithms do not panic. They need Wall Street to believe the crisis is contained. They need to keep the price of crude oil artificially suppressed for just another 48 hours. Because the moment those paratroopers jump into the night sky over Kharg Island, the illusion shatters. The markets will realize they have been lied to, and the economic hemorrhage will begin. When an empire decides to expand a conflict, the first casualty is the domestic truth. The citizens funding the operation must be kept entirely in the dark until the moment of impact. If the American taxpayer knew that their government was about to ignite a ground war that would instantly double the cost of domestic logistics and freeze 20% of the global energy supply, the political backlash would paralyze the operation. The administration knows this. The Pentagon knows this. So they manufacture a phantom peace plan. They treat the American public not as citizens to be informed, but as a domestic liability to be managed. It is a clinical, cold-blooded calculation. Keep the cameras focused on a phantom document in Pakistan. Keep the analysts debating the 15 points on television. Keep the anti-war politicians pacified with promises of de-escalation. And while everyone is looking at the fake diplomatic victory, you load the rifles. You fuel the transports. You launch the invasion. The contradiction is absolute. They are preaching peace in the daylight while preparing for a highly kinetic, casualty-intensive ground assault in the dark. The officials on press television understand this. That is why they are laughing. They see the troop movements. They see the destruction of their submarine base. They know the 15-point plan is a piece of paper designed to distract the American voter, not a serious framework for survival. You are watching a masterclass in operational deception. The media is reading the script they were handed. The politicians are playing their assigned roles. But the raw data does not lie. The flight manifests do not lie. The structural destruction in Isfahan does not lie. 3,000 paratroopers are not a peacekeeping force. They are an invasion force. And they are deploying right now, hidden behind the biggest diplomatic lie of this entire conflict. Strip away the geopolitical chessboard. Strip away the oil markets, the maritime insurance algorithms, and the 15-point plans. Look at the raw arithmetic of human fragility. A 100-kilogram warhead, 220 pounds of military-grade high explosives descending on a residential apartment block in central Tel Aviv. At 3 in the morning, a civilian is asleep. They do not know the Qatar 110 has separated its submunitions in the upper atmosphere. They do not know the billion-dollar interceptor grid is entirely overwhelmed by a swarm of $20,000 decoys. There are no sirens. When 100 kilograms of explosives detonate in a high-density urban environment, the primary mechanism of lethality is not fire. It is atmospheric physics. The overpressure wave expands outward at supersonic velocity. The human respiratory system is an incredibly delicate instrument. It is designed for 14.7 pounds per square inch. It cannot process the instantaneous crush of a blast wave. The concrete load-bearing pillars of the apartment building hold for a fraction of a second before the compression shatters their internal structure. Concrete floors pancake into each other. A family, resting in their beds, is erased in the space between heartbeats. No political rhetoric, no grand strategic victory, just the cold, clinical physics of asymmetric warfare. And thousands of miles away, the exact same quiet terror is manifesting in a different uniform. Inside the unlit, vibrating steel hull of a C-17 Globemaster, American paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division are sitting shoulder to shoulder. They are completely silent. One of them is a 21-year-old infantryman. He is carrying 130 pounds of combat gear. He is staring at the red jump light above the troop door. He does not care about the price of Brent crude oil. He does not know about the underwater research facility in Isfahan. He is not thinking about a fabricated diplomatic treaty. He only knows that the static line is hooked, the ramp is going to drop, the cold air of the Persian Gulf is going to rush into the cabin, and he is going to fall into a hostile night sky. Two completely different continents, two completely different lives, both of them sacrificed to the exact same machinery. A 15-point peace plan is currently being broadcast on every major television network to keep the global financial markets pacified. Meanwhile, an entire Iranian submarine fleet was just quietly erased to clear the ocean floor of acoustic mines. And right now, 3,000 American paratroopers are flying into the dark to secure the most critical energy choke point on Earth. That is the true state of the geopolitical board. You are not watching the architecture of a diplomatic resolution. You are watching the final, irreversible logistical preparations for a massive boots-on-the-ground invasion of the Persian Gulf. So I leave you with this one question. When the price of domestic gasoline doubles by next week, and the first American transport plane inevitably takes anti-aircraft fire over Kharg Island, will you blame the foreign adversary for defending their sovereign airspace? Or will you blame the suited politicians in Washington who smiled into the cameras and sold you a fabricated peace plan, all while secretly sending the 82nd Airborne Division into a strategic meat grinder? Choose your side. Drop your answer in the comments.